welcome back to English for You video series, and I'm here with a few interesting chapters from class 10 syllabus because the board exams are quite around the corner. And so I decided that I would just revise a few chapters. I would talk about them briefly or in a very simplified way so that whatever doubts you are left with even after the explanations in the class and whatever, so you get those doubts clear and you can face your exams in a very beautiful way. So we are talking about the ball poem. Now let us talk about the poem. For your convenience, I've divided the poem into two parts. The first part is there on the board. After that we will discuss the second part too. So let us read the poem. It reads, "What is the boy now who has lost his ball?" So just imagine the situation, very young boy who is just growing up, is leaving his adolescence to become an adult. And especially in that stage, children are very emotional, very sensitive, and they get hurt easily, and they develop affection for things, attachment for things also. They want to cling with things which provide them kind of mental security. But especially people have things they are attached with. So the boy too, seeing his age, is attached with that ball. And here the symbolism, the poetic device of symbolism has been used in a big way in this poem. The ball symbolizes the boy's childhood and the simplicity and the innocence that is linked to the childhood. So the boy has lost the ball and he feels his life has become meaningless. What's there in life left after losing the ball? The ball held such an important place in his life. That's why he says, what's the boy now? It means the boy has lost the sense or the meaning of life now, losing the ball. The ball was so important for him. So what is the boy now who has lost his ball? What he is to do? The poet is now curious. He is also sorry about the boy losing the ball because the boy is feeling miserable at the loss. But the poet is curious also what happens now. He wants to know, he wants to see what he is to do. So here the poet has used repetition because we do have to comment upon the figures of speech used in the poem, and we see that here in this very second line the poet has used repetition. What he is to do. And the poet is curious about it. He wants to know what the boy will do now, how he will face the situation, how he will cope up with the loss. Now let us read it ahead. "I saw it go, merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over, there it is in the water." Now there is a kind of figure of speech which is called enjambment, where more than two lines or more than one line they run without any punctuation mark at the end. That is called enjambment. That is a kind of poetic device. And here we find, you see the second line, "I saw it go," there is no punctuation mark, and then the third line starts, "merrily bouncing down the street," and then no punctuation mark, "merrily over, there it is in the water." So two lines or three lines running without any punctuation mark at the end. That is called an enjambment. Fine. Now, so I saw it go. The poet says when the boy lost his ball, so what happened to the ball? The poet saw it go, merrily bouncing down the street. And the ball loved to go away from the boy. It was not sad about it. It was not attached to the boy like the boy was to it. So there is a great education, great moral hidden here, that we humans, we get attached to things and that become the cause of our misery, cause of our suffering. So we should not be attached to anything in this world. This is the moral, because the things for which we are sorry at losing them, things we are so attached to, they are not sorry going away from them, getting lost, not being in our hands. That's why attachment is always the source of all kinds of misery, all kinds of suffering. That's why the poet says, merrily bouncing. Here the poet uses personification. The ball is a ball, it is a thing. But when you attribute a human quality to a thing or something which is not human, it is called the poetic device of personification. So the poet uses the figure of speech which is called personification. I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street. And then where? Merrily over. Where? There it is in the water. It has gone into the harbor. What is a harbor? Harbor is a protected area into just by the shore of the sea, and which is deep for the ships to be stationed properly, and it is a kind of sheltered place into the ocean or the seas so that the tempests or the storms don't harm the ships. Fine. So where the ball goes, it goes merrily bouncing down the street, and from there, and then merrily over. There it is in the water. Okay, fine. So it has gone into the water. The harbor, the boy and the street where he was playing might be very close to the harbor. Here the harbor, the water that the ball goes into, it symbolizes time. Like the ocean is infinite, so is time. Time is also infinite, limitless. It has no stretches, no limits. And into that ocean of time, into that harbor, the ball has gone. It will never come back again. Because whatever is lost in the ocean of time cannot be retrieved. Okay, so this is a very important lesson hidden here. Merrily bouncing down the street and then merrily over. There it is in the water. And then, no use to say, oh, there are other balls. So the boy has lost the ball. The situation is clear now. Now what to do? Can the ball be brought back? The poet is considering different possibilities. But there is no use. There is no use. Other balls, if they are purchased to replace one, the old one will be of no use. Why? Because it was not only the matter of the ball. It was because of the memories the child had attached to it. That was why the ball had become very precious to him. It was life to him. And at its loss, the boy feels his life has lost its meaning. That's why in the very first line, the poet has said, what is the boy now who has lost his ball? You might be understanding the concept here. So no use to say, oh, there are other balls. There may be other balls. You may be trying to replace them, but that will not bring your happiness back, which was associated with the old ball. And as I told you, the symbolism has been used in a great way in a poem. The ball symbolizes the child's childhood, the boy's childhood, and especially the traits of simplicity and innocence attached to that childhood. So the ball had become very precious to him, very precious to the boy. So that's why that ball cannot be replaced, and even thinking about replacing it with another ball is nothing else but folly. It's completely futile exercise. It hardly holds any meaning. That's why the boy says, no use to say, oh, there are other balls. This meaningless statement, that ball cannot be replaced, because it is important, because it symbolized a very important thing in his life which the boy wanted to treasure, wanted to keep safe with him throughout his life. But it's gone now. It cannot come back. What would he lose in the ocean of time? So symbolism in a very great way, a good way. Metaphorically, the poet says, here the harbor stands for the time, infinite time. And the ball stands for the childhood of the boy, or the simplicity and the innocence attached to that childhood. Fine. And then there comes another statement. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy. But it is the first loss in the life of the boy. It's the very first time he has lost something. And he is not a grown-up person. He has not learned how to cope up with such losses, because it's the very first kind of loss in his life. The boy is completely transfixed at the place where he was seeing the ball going into the harbor and becoming irretrievable. So this is it. The boy feels completely miserable, sorry, and with the grief, with the sorrow, he is fixed at the place where he was. So this statement shows the amount of grief or the suffering the boy is passing through. So we say an ultimate shaking grief. The grief is of ultimate kind. It has no parallel in the world. For the boy especially, not for you, because you might have lost several balls and must have learned how to cope up with this kind of situation. But now for this boy, it's ultimate. It shakes him completely, and that shaking grief fixes the boy. He's unable to think anything, move or take any step or say anything, express anything even. Is completely fixed with the ultimate shaking grief. And as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down at what? All his young days into the harbor. Now, the poet reveals the matter a bit. He says, the boy is fixed with grief and he stands rigid. No flexibility. Flexibility is the symbol of life, sign of life. It shows that you are in motion. You have got some energy. You can bounce back. The boy with the grief has got completely rigid. Okay, and not only rigid. Rigid means straight, without any motion, without showing any sign of life, flexibility, resilience, whatever. So as he stands, how he stands rigid, okay, trembling out of the grief that has completely overtaken him, overwhelmed him, you can say. The boy is trembling, shaking, and what he's doing, he just unbelievably staring down all his young days. So now it reveals that it's not only the matter of the ball that fixed the boy with the grief. He's staring down all his young days going into the harbor. So the harbor means the harbor of time, from where nothing can be brought back. So the boy sees all his young days, means all the days of his childhood, with which so many memories have been attached. So many beautiful things happened when he was a child, so many beautiful emotions, feelings, gains, memories, everything with the childhood days going will go. Fine, this beautiful line, all his young days into the harbor, where his ball went, I would not intrude on him. So the situation is quite clear. The boy lost his ball, and since it is the first loss, it has completely swept him off his feet. He is unable to gain his composure, he is completely fixed with the grief. He is unable to understand what to do now. And with sorrow, he sees the young days going into the harbor. Fine, this is a beautiful stanza which talks about life. And there are such things to happen whether you want it or not. Sometimes it is because of the time you will lose certain things. Sometimes it is because of the world which will make you lose certain things, and which may make you bitter, may make you sad, miserable, which may make you suffer an indescribable loss. But these things we have to learn how to cope up with. So his ball went. Now it cannot be received. It cannot be gained back, cannot be retrieved. The ball is gone. And should the poet try to make the child understand that these are the things which are inevitable, which will happen, nothing can be done about them. So we have to be emotionally mature. We have to be emotionally mature and do things in a proper way. But the poet says, I will not intrude upon his privacy, upon his right of privacy. And he says, I would not intrude on him. He doesn't want to interfere, because such lessons cannot be taught. Such lessons cannot be learned from others, cannot be taught by others. okay, cannot be explained by others. Such lessons every person has to learn by himself or herself. And better he teaches himself or herself that he has to be strong, mature, flexible, take that loss into his or her stride and move on, because this is what life is. And this is the lesson that every person should learn himself or herself. That's why the poet says he doesn't want to intrude on him, doesn't want to interfere with the situation, with the boy facing the grief, because he knows the same event will mature the boy. It will teach him how to cope up with it. This is a beautiful poem. I think you are understanding things. Now we would move on to the next part of the poem, another half of the poem. So the boy has to learn his own lesson and himself. That's why the poet doesn't want to intrude on him, to interfere with what the child has to learn himself. And then further we read, a dime, another ball is worthless. The ball, if seen externally, what's the price of a ball? How much does it cost? A dime, it means just 10 cents. So that never matters. It's not about the price for which another ball comes. No matter how much the price is or how small, getting another ball hardly holds any importance. It's worthless because it cannot bring him back the thing which was associated, attached to that ball which has been lost. Therefore, getting another ball for whatever price is completely worthless. It has no meaning. Now he senses first responsibility. And what is the responsibility? It's not about how to cling to something, trying to prevent from losing it in the future. Siddhartha Gautama, you talk about, he couldn't have got anything had he got himself attached to his life or to whatever he had in the world, his wife, his son, his kingdom, his worldly life and everything. He renunciated everything, he left everything, he let things go. And then came the enlightenment. So losses are very important in life because they teach us very good lessons. They make us wiser, they help us grow. Then comes the transformation, which is a major theme in the poem. And so now he senses first responsibility. What is the first responsibility? The responsibility is to teach oneself that these losses will happen again and again in life. Nobody can stop them. They will keep happening. And making oneself sorry over each and every loss is just stopping the progress. It's not moving on, and life doesn't stand still, it moves on. We cannot keep standing at the bank and staring on the flow of the river. This we cannot afford to do. That's why now he senses first responsibility. And what's that? In a world of possessions, okay, he senses first responsibility in a world of possessions. The world of possessions means people have things. Okay, people accumulate things because this is the world where there is a mania of accumulating things, or at least having things and getting attached to them, clinging to them so that they do not go away. So in a world of possessions, he senses his first responsibility. And what is that? People will take balls. It means people will deliberately make you face the situations where you will be facing into the eye of a loss. They will snatch things away from you. They will take things away from you. They will cause all the suffering and miseries through the losses they cause in your life. So people will become another source through which you lose things in life. So people will take balls will be lost always. So whether it is people who take your ball away, important things in your life away, or whether it is the nature itself, time itself, it matters not. What matters is losses are part and parcel of life, and they are there to stay. So he says, and here he uses repetition again. You see balls, people will take balls will be lost always. So balls And alliteration too, B, the consonant sounds getting repeated. So repetition and alliteration, both the poetic devices are at use here. Balls will be lost always. Little boy, the poet wants to address the little boy. Though the boy is not with him, but the poet addresses, oh little boy, you should understand that whether it is people trying to do it to you, or whether it's the time or nature, whatever may be the reason, but you will come across such things that again and again in your life. You don't have to be sad about it. It's all about maturing up. It's all about growing up. Then will come the transformation which is required to live peacefully and joyfully in the world. Because if we are attached to things from our past or from our life, it's the misery we are inviting into our life. So we have to be wiser. We have to stop being sorry at such losses. Therefore, he says, and no one buys a ball back. And those balls cannot be bought back, because not just the external thing which is a ball. It's about the things which are associated with the balls. And they were associated with the old ball. They cannot be got back with a new one. So therefore nobody buys a ball. There's no use doing that. That's a meaningless job. No one buys a ball back. Money is external, and especially the price paid through money is not sufficient to make up for the loss that the child or anybody faces in life, because money is external. It can buy things which are external. But here the loss attached with the ball is not external, it is something internal. The child has lost something which was inherent part of his soul, the childhood, the simplicity, the innocence, and that he feels gone with the ball. So no matter whether he spends how much money and whether he buys something else, another ball, but those things which were attached with the previous one, it cannot be retrieved, cannot be gained back. Therefore he says, no one buys a ball, money is external. And now he's learning well behind his desperate eyes, the epistemology of loss. Now he's learning well behind his desperate eyes. He's desperate about things, about the loss, about what is happening in his life and what would the consequences be, and how he should cope up with them. So he's desperate about so many things. And just behind his desperate eyes, he is trying to understand things. Why it happened, what it meant to him, and what lessons should he derive from it. So that's why he's learning. And every loss teaches you. The boy is maturing now. He's gaining a kind of wisdom. That's why the poet says he's learning well behind his desperate eyes. The epistemology of loss. It means the knowledge about something, that what loss is about, what loss means in your life. That loss will be there. It cannot be avoided. It cannot be ignored. It will be there. It will make us sorry and miserable for a small amount of time. But the important thing to learn is we should not let that suffering and misery be attached to us for a long duration because of that loss. Because if we allow it to happen, life will be miserable. So therefore, what the poet says is learning the epistemology of loss, how to stand up knowing what every man must one day know. Now he's learning what? How to stand up and how to cope up with situations of the similar intensity, of those sufferings, those losses, those miseries, those detachments, those things getting away from you. These things, they are natural, they will happen to you. The boy is learning all that like a mature and adult one does. And this understanding is now slowly coming to him. So loss or adversity or suffering and miseries, these are great teachers. So what through the ball poem the poet wants to teach you, that everybody should learn how to face the kind of misery, the kind of losses, the kind of situation in one's life, and how to just sail through it, and how to steer clear of it, how to come out of it with flying colors. And that's what the poet wants to teach you through the poem. To say the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days how to stand up. So it happens with almost everybody. People, with the passage of time, are bound to lose things. So the child does, and the people have done, and the people will keep doing. And it happens with everybody. It's kind of learning process. We cannot avoid it, but we can learn important lessons from it, can go ahead in life. That's what people do. That's what everybody does. And that's what the boy is doing. And what will happen to him? So he will become mature, an adult one, ready to take on bigger challenges, ready to face bigger miseries, and remain a kind of normal sort through those situations. So this is what the poem, it is a beautiful poem. So many poetic devices used, repetition was there, alliteration was there, personification was there. When he says merely bouncing, is just providing a human attribute to a ball. So merely bouncing. Okay, he says, then there was personification, like the ball has been given the human attribute. Then there is symbolism in a very big way, like harbor stands for time. Okay, and likewise the ball stands for the childhood, the innocence, the simplicity, these traits attached to childhood. And then we find so many things like repetition is there. There are alliteration too, where the consonant sounds are repeated in a line. So these are a few things that you will find in the poem. The poem is quite simple words, no difficult phrases, nothing, something like you cannot understand, and it teaches you a very important lesson. So I hope you have understood the whole poem, you will enjoy it. So please watch the video carefully and take notes if needed, and I hope you are happy. You will, I think, be in a position to answer all the questions when comes in the exams correctly, and I'll be happy to see you succeed in life. Thank you very much. So very soon we'll come up with a new video, and first the ball poem will be presented in Hindi also, so that the students coming from the Hindi heartland can understand it well. So thank you very much for being with me. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe the channel so that you can get all the information coming ahead. So just meet you very soon. Bye. Take care.